Can everyone please mute or silence their phones like a movie theater? Thank you. It's a slogan.
Thank you all, and sorry to keep you waiting. We just came down how to computer where we got CNN town hall. We're already behind the wheel. 30 minutes that exist in California. We were able to make it to the airport, come home, up in my own bed, be with my family, and then get to see you all here today at this incredibly important. So I was hoping to do today, every time I get a chance to talk, magic happen from our headquarters here in El Paso. A very small number of us who get to travel and be with the fellow Americans who come out to our town halls or sit down with us at round tables or have these incredibly important, unguarded, raw, honest conversations about their lives and about the future of this country. And for me, it's a daily, almost you see or hear about often enough. And so I want to tell you just from this last fairly short trip, getting to be in Las Vegas and being with our amazing team who's leading efforts on the ground in Nevada, to be holding town halls where we bring people in who may have just been able to hear about us for the first time over the course of this campaign. And of those 60%, we don't know how much they know. So literally getting to show up and travel and be there in person, not only better understand what's on the minds of those that I want to serve and who are going to decide these important elections, but it's a chance for them to know this campaign exists and a chance for them to join it. At this town hall in Los Angeles for the night, so those jobs involves working for a home health care agency through which she's actually able to get paid to take care of Summer, who needs constant around the clock supervision and care. She drives for Uber Eats and DoorDash and another company as well. And despite working these 4 jobs, she does not make enough to be able to have a roof over her head or consistently put food on the table or make sure that Summer has everything that she needs to be in her peace and treated with respect. It really that you all put there that no one's to plans of millions. Being in Los Angeles and going to a community, Segundo Barrio, a little bit of our neighborhood in Sunset Heights where Amy and I are living, that they're represented. Again, talking about issues that we all led on together, issues of gun violence and endemic racism. The photo line, a young woman comes up and she says, "I'm a dreamer, I'm a DACA beneficiary, successful as a candidate, and that you'll be my president." That was a really powerful deciding states in the pursuit of the Democratic nomination, but whose people are just as important as anyone else in any other state in the union, and who on a Sunday morning in Phoenix is democracy. They're going to Tucson to come in, many of them young, probably most of them not reflected in anyone's polls or calculations or voter profiles disproportionately affect them and their futures. That felt really good. In front of enough of our fellow Americans to tell that story and to bring them in and to make sure they answer with my name when the pollster calls their home and says, "Who are you likely to vote for as a nominee for your party?" That's going to take all of us redoubling the efforts that we're already pouring in to this campaign. Everyone who's watching, committing themselves to donating 5, 10, 15, help 25, $100 if you can, to make sure that we have the resources literally to break through and reach those who are going to make the decision in this election. Now, the pundits, to some degree, the pollsters, and folks in the media who have a really important and a very tough job in this defining, decisive year, in too many instances have defined this race as between only 2 people. It's easy, it's convenient, and in some cases, it's lazy. We're going to have to break through that. In some ways, following the lead of our great communications team and getting on air, answering the questions in those interviews, being in print in the publications that people are reading. And in some cases, we have to go past that through this live stream that many are watching right now, and through using these dollars to get up on the air and to tell our message unfiltered in our own terms, as raw, as honest, as bold, as energized as you've ever seen it. I'm confident in our ability to compel our fellow Americans to see in us a unique opportunity and chance for this country. That's the way it has always been in any race that I've ever run. We've always been counted out, we've always been low in the polls, and we have always defied expectations by being able to meet those who will literally make the decision. When I ran against the incumbent member of Congress in 2012, he outspent us 5-1. He had name ID that we could only dream of. There was no chance that we were going to be able to win this, except for the chance that we felt and that we made true. I think, David, we had one full-time employee on that campaign. Everybody else was just pouring in their spare time, volunteering on this effort. We knocked tens of thousands of doors over the course of that race. I knocked on 16,000 doors alone. And some of you heard me tell this story, but I knew we had a chance to win when just about a month out, Monday morning, walking into a diner, and a guy stops me and he says, "Are you Beto O'Rourke?" I said, "I am." And he said, "You knocked on my grandmother's door on Thursday. She welcomed you in. She told you about her daughter who's a school teacher that she's so proud of, her grandson who's serving in the Marines, and you listened to her, and you guys had a great conversation, and obviously made a connection, because this last Sunday, I and my 32 other cousins all had menudo at her house, and she made each of us promise to vote for you in this next election." So he said, "Dude, I don't know who you are. I've never heard of you before, but don't mess this up, because we're all behind you, and you're going to win this thing." And we did, and absolutely upset the expectations, the conventional political wisdom, the polls that existed that said that the incumbent congressman was going to win this in a walk without even a runoff, and we defeated him without a runoff. In Texas, we thought about this challenge. We can't knock on every door in Texas, so what do? We go to every one of the 254 counties, and we demonstrate, beyond just saying this, that everyone is important to us. You cannot be too Republican or too rural or too Democrat or too big city for us to show up. We're going to be there to listen to you, to make sure that you're not written off or taken for granted or counted out. We're going to bring you in. And literally, we brought people in. A state that had ranked 50th in voter turnout, not because we love our democracy any less than anyone else, but literally because we were drawn that way on the basis of the color of our skin or our country of national origin, drawn out of congressional districts to diminish the power of our vote or the likelihood that our voice was ever heard. We transcended that by coming together and knocking on doors and going to those counties and listening to people. And we saw the greatest voter turnout in a midterm election in Texas history. Won more votes than any Democrat had in the history of the state. Won independence for the first time in decades. Saw young people turn out at an increase of 500% in early voting over the last midterm election. And we put Texas and its 38 electoral college votes in play in America for the first time since 1976. Now, our challenge, again, is one of scope. It's no longer one congressional district, one state. It is an entire country. And that's why we need everyone to help us with their resources, both donating money and then signing up to volunteer. For those watching on the live stream, going to BetoO'Rourke.com to both make that donation and then sign up to knock on doors. Literally, that is what is going to make the difference. That human-to-human contact at a time that we're so consumed by our digital devices, we're so divided and separated and polarized. That's going to make all the difference in the world. And if ever there were a time to commit ourselves to doing that, it is right now at this moment. We have a path to the nomination, and through that, a path to the presidency. But at this moment, we've got to break through. So I need everyone's help doing everything they can. Those of you who are on this staff here in El Paso and across the country, and everyone who's watching right now, to make sure that you make this commitment now. There is no later moment to do it. It must happen now if we're going to make the most of this moment of the momentum that we have, of this wonderful trajectory that we're on. So, as I welcome Jen up to give you the details on some of what I just described, the very positive picture that we have of this campaign, thanks to the work that you're doing, I want to close by thanking you for keeping the faith, for doing the work, for allowing me to lead you in this effort to lead America after we win this in 2020. Thank you all very much.
Hi guys, thank you, that was so nice. I feel really good. You should come every week to these staff meetings so I get that rousing applause. All right, awesome. Obviously, I know all of you, staff and folks on the live stream, are here to hear from Beto, and we're going to do some Q&A at the end of this. So if you guys have questions, all of you, and the people that are our teams across the country and folks joining us, get them ready because we want to answer them. But before we did that, we actually just wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on. Beto talked a little bit about this already, gave you a sense of where we are on the campaign, how do we think about what it means for our fundraising numbers and what that plan is to win. And you know, I think too often we talk about this stuff as staff and we don't actually bring other people in. And one of the main reasons I was so excited to join this campaign was how Beto put people first, but people at the heart of every campaign he's ever built. That the grassroots was never an afterthought. They were actually front and center, part of not only the work that we had to do, but also the strategy and helping us figure out how to get there. So our goal today is just to give you a little bit more of a sense of how we're thinking about this race, share with you some of the good things and some of the things we need to work on that we need your help on. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly, if I can make it work. Right now it is not clicking, so this is like a typical meeting. You can tell this is not like a PR stunt because we had a sign fall already and the clicker's not working. But part of this is talking about the quarter and putting it in context for you. So the story of Q3, we say Q3, this is the third quarter of the year, the 3 months that we just came through, and that story is really pretty strong. You know, and it's also something where we have a lot that we're excited about, but a lot we want to talk about. So the story of the third quarter is, you know, we were off to a little bit of a slower start, and then we had, you know, tragedy befall here in El Paso that affected so much of this team, but also the country. And so, rightly so, we shut down the campaign for a couple weeks and made sure that we were focused, all of us, this whole campaign, on this community and on the so many millions of people that are impacted by what happened here. So that was the absolute right thing to do, but that also was a time where we weren't doing the kind of day-to-day work that we would typically be doing that the other campaigns were. And then we come fast forward as we go back onto the campaign trail and we get into September, and September has been an incredibly strong month for us in the campaign. The strongest month since the launch of the campaign, so we're going to go through that a little bit. But more than just the fundraising, and we're going to talk about the fundraising because it's a campaign and it's the end of the quarter and that's what we got to do, but every metric that we're looking at across our entire campaign has really gotten stronger. We're really proud of that and we want to share that with you. Okay. So, $4.5 million, we raised $1 million more, as Beto said, than we did the last quarter, knowing that, you know, we had that slower start, but also that the campaign was not functioning for a couple weeks there. So we feel really good about this number, but we know we can keep growing it. But the deal is, one number, that's the stuff that people talk about. We're going to focus on that. Everyone likes to talk about it. Even my mother asked me what our fundraising numbers were, which I really appreciated. But underneath that, there's a lot of other things that really are what we focus on as a campaign to think about and understand how we're doing and how we're growing. So this just helps you see the chart of growth, and this is what I look at every day. Every day I get an email that helps me see not just what we've done that day, but how that is in comparison to what we've done previously. You can see both the growth over the period of the quarter, but also from the second quarter. And so we're really looking at the health of the organization. You guys are all, every one of those dots are you guys are part of, so feel good about that. You know, and we see, and you know, I've sort of highlighted this, but really just kind of shows where we were in the middle of the quarter, and then that growth in September. And that tells us a lot. When we came back on the campaign trail, we were talking about what happened here. Beto was leading on an issue and guns and on talking about really calling out the president in a way nobody else had, and you're seeing that reflecting in the metrics of the money that we raised. So how do we also look at that? We look at that by feeling good that our growth metrics across not just the bottom line, but also our total donors and the time period, not just from the full quarter, but from the period when we went back on the campaign trail, gave us a lot of added growth. So we were over 150% growth in average contributions since we went back on the campaign trail. And we had 20% of our donors, they gave to us for the first time, which is awesome, right? I mean, it shows not just that this is fueled by so many of you that have been there from day one, from when Beto was running for city council to when he was running for Senate, but also new people are energized by what we're doing, and they're coming in the door every single day, and that is really an important metric for us to look at. And one thing I really want to highlight, while we were not campaigning for a period of time in August, we were still doing really important work. In fact, probably more important work than even fundraising for this campaign, which was helping to do all we could to support causes, in particular the victims' funds here in El Paso, to make sure that they have the resources to support the community here. But we also were raising money for down ballot candidates. We also were raising money for national and local groups that are on the front lines of the gun battle, and that's something that we're really proud of. We raised over $1 million for those entities in our quarter, and I think that's something that is a testament to Beto, but also a testament to all of you and the values that we share. Every quarter that we've had, we have always raised for other people, other candidates and causes in addition to our campaign. We're going to continue to do this, and I'll take less money as our bottom line to be able to share we were able to do that. Okay, so let's expand this a little bit. How do we think about this, not just fundraising, but some of the other metrics that we have? So first of all, organizing, something that is so important to this campaign. Certainly, we focus on the early states, but we're also focused on our programs all across the country. And you can see that we had real significant growth in September for our volunteers. We grew nearly 20% in September. That's just in the early states alone. If you look nationally, we have a 51% growth of volunteers and volunteer activity in September. We're going to keep pushing those metrics, but really proud of that, and so proud of the work that was underneath that our volunteers, they were knocking on doors and they were reaching voters, but they were also in the community. They were supporting the community. They were talking about what we can do on guns. They were talking about how you can get involved, not just in supporting Beto, but really leading on these issues because they're that important. And again, I think really distinguishing for us as a campaign. Again, on fundraising, just like to break down those numbers for everyone so that it's not just one big number. At every way we raise money, online, in our store, SMS, that's texting for the old people like myself. I can't believe I just explained that. On the website, and email, every single one of these we increased across the board from Q2. So we weren't just seeing added success in one place, we were seeing it across every single channel that we reach out to. And then something we are incredibly proud of on this campaign, something that's always been at the heart of this, our engagement online, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Twitter. We saw a huge engagement this quarter. And in fact, we were number 3 across every single presidential candidate in this race on digital engagement, growing our impressions. This just shows you a graph on Twitter where we multiplied our to speaking truth, calling out Donald Trump when others were afraid to, going further than anyone had on what we can do to get these weapons of war off the street, not being afraid to say the right thing, even if conventional wisdom tells you that it's not possible. Beto has never been afraid to do that, and he has really pushed that conversation forward, so much so that other candidates are coming on board with our positions as well. And you can see, there's so much talk, oh my God, mandatory buybacks, we can't possibly support that. That's just not a winning issue for Democrats. Well, 52% of people support that, and the numbers are even higher. I saw numbers this week in Texas where of primary voters, over 80% of people support an assault weapon ban and a buyback. So conventional wisdom is not actually the path forward, and really driving that narrative has been a core part of what we've done this quarter. Okay, so then all that shit was amazing. We feel super good about it. But then, like, what the fuck? The polls. I know, that's how I feel basically every day. I just remember that my daughters are here, so hopefully they did not hear me say that. I think they're in the back. So how do you put that in context, right? I get that question all the time. Again, my mom, like, everyone loves you. I'm so proud of what you're doing. Beto is amazing. But these poll numbers, why aren't they moving? Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about that. And there's a lot that we have that we believe we can do to make that change. But the reason we feel like we're in this situation, and Beto alluded to this earlier, is what we like to call the media trap. And the reality is, this is an incredibly cluttered race. This is an cluttered time in our lives, right? But 20 candidates plus, all running for president, all of them amazing. And there's a lot that we want to say and a lot that we want to do. But the conversation, again, that conventional wisdom is saying this is a two-person race. It's just two people, basically, nobody else is going to compare. We're just going to, we're going to just drive and focus on those. And that's a real impediment. It's total bullshit, but it's something that we got to take seriously and figure out what to do about. I skipped ahead of my slide. That should say it's total bullshit, but it's not a media trap. Only 9% of the Democratic electorate is decided. 9%. I mean, what the heck are we talking about here? Of course, this is not a two-person race. If only 9% of people have made up their mind, that means, one, there's tons of fluidity in this race, and two, a lot of people are still not paying attention and still not tuning in, and that means that we have a lot of opportunity. Beto mentioned this, but 40% of voters still don't know who we are, right? So that's on all of us to figure out how do we change that, because we know when people know more about Beto, they support him. The stories, the feedback, the responses, the thousands of people that are showing up at our events and then turning to supporters right on the spot, that is something that we have seen at every step, whether we're in an early state or in a state that nobody else is going to, and that really matters. Can we just take a moment for those of you at home, the second picture of small business owner with Beto's hair. I actually asked him if that was him because I wasn't sure. Anyway, it is. So here's the point. A lot of people, so I already said 40% of people don't know who we are. 60% that don't know the full story of Beto, right? Most people, they've seen him to the extent that they're watching the debates, which, let's remember, less than 20% of the Democratic primary electorate has tuned into any debate. And at each debate, the numbers go down, right? So we're hitting a small segment on what is often perceived as the biggest stage. But people who do know him don't know the full story. They know what he did in the Senate race, which is amazing, but they also have a lot that we can share with them and tell the story of the kind of leader Beto is. From his time in city council, leading on issues like same-sex marriage, writing a book on marijuana. I have to tell you, I had no idea that Beto wrote a book on marijuana and the war on drugs, which he often rightly calls the war on people, 10 years ago, a decade ago, right? Well before conventional wisdom got to the place where everyone was on board with that idea. So telling that story as a small business owner, a successful one of a tech company here in El Paso, a place where it's such a vibrant community and really brought together and strengthened by small business. And then obviously his time in Congress, one of the first stories that we talked about was the veterans community here in El Paso and the work that he did with the VA and other members and leaders of the community, really compelled by his constituents and conversations he was having with veterans and their families, and getting work done here on behalf of veterans even when Democrats weren't in power. That's the story of Beto. That's been the story, I like to say, hands-on leadership that he's shared his entire career, and it's the kind of president he's going to be. So for us, that's really a big part of what we're going to do here, is continue to tell that story. Let me do one other thing. So many of you guys know I'm much older than a lot of the kids around here. Not kids, grown-ups, but I'm old. And I've been around for a long time when it comes to presidential politics. This is my 7th presidential race I've worked on. So basically the last 20 years, I've worked on every single presidential race. And what I can tell you is that history Doesn't always repeat itself, but it is certainly a marker for us to look to as we think about where this race is. And I think it's really, really important for us to highlight that. So let's just take a look at history, which says that the front runners, right, back to that media trap, those front runners that have been in the lead at this stage in any race that has been competitive have not been the ones that become the nominee. Okay, so remember that, and that is not me making it up, that's the deal. Like, if you think of 2016, I saw this and I kind of forgot a little bit about this. But in the Republican primaries, not just Democratic primary, Ben Carson raised the most out of any candidate in Q3. And in fact, I mean, this is astonishing to me, Donald Trump raised $3.9 million in Q3. That's like crazy, right? So I say that to say, let's just put this in context in terms of finances and how much we put on those that raise at the top without thinking about the other atmospherics there. In 2008, we had Hillary Clinton, who was ahead of Barack Obama by 20 points at this point. 20 points in Iowa. I think you remember what happened to Barack Obama, but he started to make his climb in Iowa late in November after what was then called the JJ. And then in 2003, again, a race I worked on both in 08 and 03, we had in December, so not even October, December, John Kerry was polling at 4% and John Edwards was polling at 2%. This goes a little bit in the Wayback Machine for some of you guys. But John Kerry ended up winning the Iowa caucus. Edwards came in second. They ended up being the nominee and VP candidate. So I say that to say, again, history doesn't always repeat itself, but we have a lot of history that tells us this race is wide open, and that's what we're building for. We're building for the future. Okay, so what do we do? What do we do about this media trap? Do we just say, yeah, fuck it, media trap, that sucks? No, we got a lot that we can do, and we're really focused on it. This is the biggest part of it right now. Beto talked about the urgency of this moment. We talk about the urgency of this moment in the country. Same for the campaign. There's no surprise that we're urgent right now. We have to really focus on how do we break through this media trap, and the way to do that is through advertising and organizing. And those things we are building right now, we're ready to go, but we need your help. So we're setting this goal, $2 million in the next 6 weeks. It's not a stunt, it's not a make-believe deal, it's like an actual built-out budget for line items, both on advertising and on organizing. And to learn more about that, you can go to bettero'rourke.com, and we have a plan to win, something that I'm so psyched about because it's something that the Senate campaign did in 2018. Just laid it out for everyone. Here's our deal. Here's how we're going to win. We want you in it. We want you to be part of it, and we want you to help lead us. So we built on that. We thought that was an awesome idea. You can go to that website and just kind of see more of the details of what's underneath the surface of this $2 million, what's underneath the surface of these programs. But our job is to tell Beto's story, to reach more people who don't know him right now, and continue to tell the story of who he is to the folks that are tuning in, and as Beto said, answering those polls, which we really care about. Okay, so quickly, the path to win. We've got one. It's super good, okay? Get ready for it. So our plan is to do a couple things. First of all, we're going to expand the electorate. One of the things I like to remind everyone, and myself, is that in 07 and 08, when we were on the ground in Iowa, where Barack Obama was running, many people thought we were going to have the biggest turnout ever, 150,000 caucus goers. That was our goal. Would have been the biggest ever. And that was, conventional wisdom. It ended up that 240,000 people participated in that caucus. But those folks, the non-traditional voters, the people, the first-time caucus goers, young people, people from different communities that are often left out of the process, they weren't showing up in the polls. They weren't engaged at this stage. Those numbers and that size of the electorate didn't really come through until we were in the on year. So we're going to really focus on that expansion. We know it's coming, and we over-index with those voters. We over-index with voters who are not traditional voters, who are from communities that are often forgotten in this process. We're very, very focused on the early states. We are playing to win there. We have incredibly strong teams in Iowa and New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. We feel so good about the work there. Every time Beto's on the ground in those states, the energy and the support, the growth of our team is just phenomenal, and we're going to continue to focus there. But we're not going to just focus there. We're also going to focus on a national strategy that is really playing to our strengths for Super Tuesday. Obviously, Texas, not just a small state in this process, in the Democratic primary, but also in the general election. We're going to be really heavily focused on our Super Tuesday strategy. And then we're going to continue to change our strategy. We're not going to change our strategy. We're going to continue to change our campaign, the model of campaigning, and change the narrative, right? We are going to continue to do what we did in that last quarter, push the conversation forward, and do this kind of stuff more often so that we're bringing you into the campaign we're running and that you're helping us lead that forward. Okay, so I talked a little bit about key audiences, non-traditional voters. We're really focused on not just making sure that they're responding to us, but that they're showing up in the polls and they'll ultimately be showing up on caucus night on election day. So we're very focused on, when we're traveling, the kind of work we're doing, the fact that, we have Spanish language Twitter as a small example. We're going to continue to make sure that we are building a campaign that's not just talking to the folks that are always going to be showing up, but folks that are not always in the process. Okay, really quickly, how do we think about early states? I've highlighted this already, but early states are incredibly important. We are going to fight to win in Iowa. We feel really good about our strategy there. Often, historically, they used to say, well, there's only 3 tickets out of Iowa. Well, Iowa's a lot different this year, both because, as I just said, we're going to have more people turn out, but also, in addition to the delegate numbers, they are also going to be giving a total number of support in Iowa. That means for the first time ever, we will know exactly what percentage of support every candidate gets. And so that means to us that it's going to be a very different conversation about the strength. It will narrow the field. It is not going to winnow it to a small 2 or 3 person race. So we feel really well positioned there. Move forward to New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. One of the things that often is forgotten is that most of these contests are where people can register that same day, whatever party they were before, or if they'd never been registered, and show up to vote and caucus. That's one of the most awesome parts of our process, that people can come in and be part of it. So one of the secrets to our success in 2018 was reaching out to folks, independent voters, people that don't identify with the party, and they turned out in huge numbers for us here. We are having those conversations every day. Those voters are also core voters for us, core voters that are going to turn out in the primary electorate, and we're really focused on them. Okay, so quickly, last step. We're talking about the plan. You know where we are. So we want to just tell you, how do we spend this money? Because we take it incredibly seriously. We really know at every dollar we spend, as you can see from our sign that fell down, we are cost conscious. We are making sure that as we're spending money, we are doing it as efficiently as we can, and we are focused on reaching as many voters as possible with every dollar we get. So we really focus on a few things. As I said, we don't take the money for granted that we raise. We invest heavily in our people, in our staff, in supporting our staff, in our volunteers, in our operations on the ground. That's where the majority of the resources on this campaign go to. Not to media, not to consultants, not to fancy people, but to our people who work every single day to be part of this and support this campaign, and we will always have that balance. And then we also are focused on scalable voter contact programs, and we're really excited about a bunch of new pilots we're rolling out, some new tools we've just locked in, so there's going to be a lot of growth there. This is, like, no bullshit, my actual budget pie graph that lays out exactly how the money is moving. I get this every week, breakdown of where the money is, and you can see here that what we're talking about, payroll and benefits, that's where the majority of the money on this campaign goes to. And I just want to highlight, as I mentioned, I'm old, I've been around for a long time. The first campaign job I had, I was paid $300 a month, and that wasn't very livable. But we have come a long way when it comes to supporting our staff, and I am so proud to say that we pay our staff more than any other campaign, more than any campaign I've been in part of, but also more than any campaign out there, because we know the work they are doing, we know how hard everyone's working, and we want to respect that and make sure that we are supporting that, whether you're on staff, whether you're an intern, whether you're a fellow. We are going to make sure that you are paid for the work that you're doing. But we also know that people have families and lives and things happening, and just because you're on a campaign doesn't mean you shouldn't be supported with benefits like any other job. And so we are so proud that we have a 12-week parental leave policy. We have a 3% 401k match, which is amazing. Healthcare costs, that includes vision and dental, often not included, and then a flex spending plan for dependent health care. So for child care or senior care, it could be anyone in your family, something that has certainly never been on a campaign that I'm a part of. So I share that with you, not so much to brag, but to just say, like, we are living our values. Beto is living his values. This is one of the first things we talked about when we talked about the campaign. How do we make sure we not wait for legislative change or to be in office to do the right thing? How do we make sure we reflect that in the campaign we're building? And so that's really what the money is going to, supporting our team, but also expanding our voter contact programming and expanding our advertising as well. So as we talked about, we're going to go into questions, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavor for how we really think about this stuff, what we're looking at, the metrics we use to measure where we are, but also the fact that we've got some work to do, that we have, all of us, a responsibility to make sure we're doing all we can to push those numbers in the polls, to make sure that we are not just amplifying the work directly from the campaign and kind of bypassing that media trap that we talked about, but also all of us using our networks and our voice to communicate out on behalf of the campaign, because we know how powerful you are. You know, Beto told the story of the woman from door knocking and the power of her talking to her family. We feel the exact same way. Your friends, your colleagues, have a conversation. I bet people don't know that Beto was a small business owner. I bet people didn't know how he led on same-sex marriage and benefits in the city council. We have the tools. We're going to be rolling out some awesome new things online to help make sure and make it easier for folks to have that information at the ready, for you to sign up. Go to the website, both to get more information, but to sign up, as Beto said, if you can drop $1 or $2, but also, you know, we need you, we need your voice, and that's what's going to do it. That's what's going to push us in this moment and get us to that next step. So, you know, this is a big moment for us as a campaign, a big moment for us as a country. So proud of what all of you guys have done, so proud of this grassroots organization we've built, and really excited to continue to build it with you. So, that's it. We're going to go to questions. Yay. Okay. All right. You guys got questions in here?
And are we also taking questions from the internet? Let me just say one thing, and I really appreciate how transparent this campaign is being and how transparent Jen just was about where we are, how we're spending our money, the fact that we're living our values, and what it's going to take to make the most of this moment and really make sure that we put all the great work that you all have invested in this campaign and get the nomination and have a chance to take on and defeat Donald Trump. One of the things Jen said is that in addition to living our values, we're literally changing this country through this campaign right now, not waiting until January of 2021. We've seen that on the gun debate and what we're now able to talk about when we talk about guns and gun violence in America. This campaign, all of us literally changed that. And when we finally get to gun sense legislation signed into law, it'll be thanks to everyone who made that effort at the outset. Those of you who joined us at Tornillo, this was last summer, we didn't wait for legislation, we didn't wait for a change in the White House. We showed up where we knew kids were being detained after they were separated from their parents, and we forced not just a conversation, but a change in policy. Tornillo is now shut down. That zero tolerance policy no longer exists. There's a lot of fucked up things happening to a lot of kids at the border right now, so we're not there yet. It's not mission accomplished, but it was all of us deciding that we were going to come together to make a change right now while we can, and not always looking over our shoulder at who's behind us or what the polls say down the road. Just what is the right thing to do and who can we do it with and can we get it done right now? And we've done that. One last example. Last night I was at this great HRC CNN town hall on LGBTQ issues. And there was this woman who'd been given the microphone. I think her name was Yvette, and she was there with her son Daniel. And they began to talk about issues that affected the transgender community in America. And a woman named Blossom came up and kind of took, but was kind of given the microphone by Yvette. It could have been a perilous moment for live television. But it was one of the best moments I've seen in our democracy. And the way I was talking about it with Ben when we were waiting for our flight at LAX is, look, in this democracy, if they don't give you the mic, you got to take the mic. And if you have an epidemic of violence, of murder against trans women of color in this country, and no one's talking about it at a forum ostensibly about all of these issues, then grab a microphone. And I want to hear from you. And then our team reached out to Blossom over Twitter and said, in fact, we're going to hold a town hall exclusively on this issue. And I guarantee you in that way, changing the terms of the debate, the focus of this country, and the outcomes for trans women of color in America. Not waiting until we're in the White House, not waiting until the general election, doing it right now with what we have, where we are at this moment. So I just want to make sure that you all take a moment to reflect on the very real change that is occurring right now because of you and everyone who's part of this campaign that is out there, and the fact that with more resources, more people, more volunteers, we can do even more good even before we become the nominee and have a chance to take on Donald Trump. So with that, questions, and I know there's beer that is being iced down right now. There's a tray full of guacamole, and I'm thinking about those things too. But let's take a few questions, and then we'll have a chance just to hang out and chill.
I'll ask a question.
Got it.
So this last quarter, you went to like Bland County, Virginia, and a gun show in Conway, Arkansas.
With your entire family.
With my family.
Yes.
But those are places that like most Democrats would think conversations are going to be harder, but you seem to continue to go to those places. What makes you excited to keep going to those places in the next quarter and throughout the rest of the campaign?
I think Amy can attest to this. Out on the campaign trail, whether city council or what we're doing now, nothing makes us happier than for someone to say, what in the hell are you doing here? No one ever comes to my neighborhood. No one's ever knocked on my door. No one ever comes to my county. No one knows that I exist or that I matter. I feel forgotten, left behind, like I don't count or matter. And by showing up, and listen, those of us who grew up in El Paso, we know what this feels like. I've been accused of having an El Paso-sized chip on my shoulder because we're so hard for people to get to. 2 flights almost from anywhere else in the U.S. So when folks were making policy on the border or the war on drugs or U.S.-Mexico relations or immigration, they never came here. We just received the brunt of whatever the policies were that were dreamed up half a country away. I never wanted to do that to anyone else. And so it feels so good to be in Conway, Arkansas, or Bland County, or really even Tucson, Arizona, where no other candidate has come to. And I've learned so much by being in those places, going to Forest and Canton, Mississippi. Why are we there? Because people are being harmed and terrorized, and they live terrified lives because of this president. And if we don't raise our voices and their stories, we're not going to be able to help them. So we go there. But then this invites the question, Beto, that's great. Love that makes you feel good. That's the kind of campaign we want to see in America. But we've got to do better in Iowa, in New Hampshire, in Nevada, and South Carolina. Support those great teams that we have on the ground. Here's the proposition I think that we have as a campaign, is bringing those stories from other parts of the country into Iowa and taking the stories from Iowa to the other parts of the country. That can help knit together this very divided country that's being driven apart every single day by Donald Trump. My ability to see myself in you and you in me, that at the end of the day, before we're Republicans or Democrats, you're small town, I'm big city, we're Americans first before we're anything else. And we have this extraordinary chance to do something great for ourselves and for those who will follow us in this country. And I've found, and Norm, who's watching and is on the line, may be able to confirm, that since we've started more intentionally traveling to states that aren't often included, to communities that have never been visited before, including in Bland County, the people in Iowa are really interested, and they want to hear those stories. They want to know what is happening and how I would treat that situation or change those conditions as President of the United States. So again, our ability with the resources and the volunteers to be able to reach everybody and then bring everyone together, that's a central way that we win the nomination, but it's also a central way that we do good for America in this campaign. So it's the right way to do it, and I think it may be the only way that you defeat Donald Trump. Other questions?
Yeah,
Amen.
so Patricia from Orlando wants to know, how is everyone in El Paso doing since the shooting?
Oh, Patricia, thanks for asking. Thanks for being on the live stream. Thanks for the support and the help in the campaign. And thanks for your concern about El Paso. You know, in some ways, I'm overcome by pride in how this community has responded and overcome the terror that we experienced on the 3rd of August. And the way that we've refused to allow that act or that violence or that hatred or that racism or this president who calls us dangerous, who talks about immigrants as rapists and criminals, who stokes the fear and really directs the violence that we saw here in El Paso, we're not going to let them win or define us or literally call the shots. And I also think El Paso is fully realizing we have this incredibly powerful, positive, important story to tell with the rest of the country. Really to see that our differences are not disqualifying or dangerous. They really, in many ways, are the foundation of our success. And that thing which drew the killer here is that thing which may afford this country a path to far greater outcomes that we would see otherwise. On the other hand, Amy and I, and Cynthia's with us as well, just last week visited with Memo. And those of you here in the room know him or know his story well. Others on the live stream may not. He was at the Walmart on August 3rd with his wife, Jessica, with his daughter, Karina, with his son, Memo Jr., and was selling lemonade to raise funds to send his daughter's soccer team to Tucson, Arizona, where we just were. And was one of the first people shot by that killer with that AK-47. And just one round from that weapon of war, that high impact, high velocity round that just shredded so much inside, it hit his liver, both of his kidneys, his spleen, his gallbladder, his intestine in 3 places. The first week of his care, he incurred a bill of $1.3 million, and he's now in his 10th week, más o menos, of care. He's just had his 26th surgery. I'm in the ballpark. And imagine one surgery, and anyone who's been under the knife and under anesthesia and been in the hospital, you know how long it takes to recover and how tough that is to come through. And he's had closing in on 30 of these surgeries. So Memo's not doing so well. He's doing far better than he was the first day that I saw him, first time I came to that hospital. But to be honest, you know, he's having a hard time, and his family is struggling right now. And it's one of the reasons I'm so proud of this campaign, raising so much money for the families who've been affected. But it is something that I don't want to gloss over. I don't want to be tempted in saying, you know what, we overcame this, everything's going to be great, don't worry about it. No, there are a lot of people who are living with a lot of pain, a lot of uncertainty right now. And frankly, there are a lot of people who live in constant terror. There's a poll that quantified it that Univision did. You may know the exact number, but over 80% of Hispanic respondents in Texas fear that they will be the victims of a mass terror attack directed against them because of their ethnicity or their immigration status or whatever their difference is from the majority in this country. That stays with us in El Paso, as does our pride, our commitment, our tenacity in overcoming this. So I'm grateful that you asked the question. I want to share all of that with you because it's got to fuel this drive to make sure that we confront racism, that we end the presidency of Donald Trump, and that we get these weapons of war off the streets so that they cannot be used against us. But appreciate the question. Thanks. Others from in the room or on the live stream? Maybe take a couple more. Yeah.
Hey Beto, so you talked about this fear that our president is inspiring in just so many Americans, sadly, and I just want to know what exactly you're doing just to stand up to his feels, stand up to his hate, and with him coming to Texas next week, what are you going to be doing about that?
Yeah, really appreciate the question. This president, in such a clear 180-degree contrast to the president who preceded him, who when I think about hope and the hope he inspired in me, and what he inspired in me to do by getting involved more seriously in public life. This president operates on fear. The fear that I'm supposed to feel about Muslims or Mexican Americans or immigrants or asylum seekers or black women who hold seats in Congress who he's told to go back to their home country. The fear that he incites when he belittles people based on their difference from the majority in this country. And then I think about the very real fear that people feel in large part because of Donald Trump. I talked about those in Texas who fear that they will be the victims of gun violence. I think about Laura Lehman, who Amy just visited with in her son Vic's hospital room. Her son Vic is an extraordinary young man, medically complex, medically expensive to care for. Laura providing she and Gary, her husband, providing most of that care in their home. And she's told us she fears that the protections for pre-existing conditions that they can count on right now may be stripped from them because this president has vowed to do just that. So in the face of this, we have to be fearless. We have to confront that false fear that he wants us to feel, and we have to be there for those who feel real fear in their lives because of Donald Trump. We're asking everyone in Texas, anyone who can spare the time here in El Paso and make the drive, certainly those in Dallas, in Fort Worth, in the DFW Metroplex in North Texas, to join us in a rally against fear this coming Thursday. It's the 17th in Grand Prairie, in the theater at Grand Prairie at 6 p.m. We want to get as many people out, and you don't have to support me. I don't have to be your candidate. You don't even have to be a Democrat. As long as you're an American, care about the future of this country, want to stand up against fear and for the best values and traditions of America, we want to see you there. So this is a signal out to everyone out there who can possibly join us. If you live in Alaska, hit the road today. It's going to take you that long to get there, but we want to see you out. Everyone is welcome. And again, it's this Thursday, the 17th of October in Grand Prairie at the theater starting at 6 p.m. Also going to be great bands and entertainment there. We want to bring everyone together. I think that's the best way to stand up against this fear that the president is trying to stoke in this country right now.
Tommy on YouTube is wondering about your Medicare plan, whether it's Medicare for All, Medicare for America, what do those things mean?
Yeah, so Tommy, we were just talking about Vic and his mom Laura and that family that is working so hard to make sure that Vic is well enough to live his life to his full potential. We want to make sure that we protect the safeguards for those with pre-existing conditions, tens of millions of our fellow Americans, but that we go far beyond anything that we've seen in America when it comes to delivering health care and ensuring that people can focus not on their insurer or their premium or their copay or whether they even get coverage at all, but instead on raising their families or going to school or working their job or whatever they were put on this planet to do in the first place. Our plan, Medicare for America, says if you don't have insurance or coverage today, we will immediately enroll you in Medicare. If you're insufficiently covered, meaning that you're afraid of going to the doctor because you cannot afford that copay, or your premiums, thanks to Donald Trump, have gone through the roof, you can move over to Medicare. But if you're one of our fellow Americans who has an employer-sponsored insurance plan that works for you and your family, if you're a member of a union that fought for, negotiated the health care plan that your family now has and you want to keep it, you're able to do that in our plan. In that way, we get to universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care for every woman, every child, every man in America, mental health care, primary health care, prescription health care, and every person, every woman making their own decisions about their own body. This is the best possible path that we could take. It's ambitious and it's reflective of listening to people all over this country. So appreciate the question.
This one's for Jen O'Malley Dillon.
All right, here we go.
Wait, I thought we were on last question.
Party's just going to begin now. Turnout in Iowa is supposed to be very high this year. What does that mean for Beto? This is from Jane in Des Moines.
Yeah, it means it's awesome for Beto. And democracy and all those things, right? Like, we want more people to turn out, and we also want to show that, that Democrats, whether you're Democrats or independents or Republicans, and now you want to support and stand up for Democrats, that you do that in the caucus. And so for us, we're really focused on the fact that we expect and we know that turnout will be higher than it has ever been in the Iowa caucus. We're counting on that. We're counting on, and we know it because as Beto's been out there talking to first-time caucus goers, students, people that have, I know, Beto, you went out door knocking in a community, same thing as you were saying, that said, nobody ever comes here. Nobody's ever gone knocking on my doors. Now I'm going to think about this. The caucus didn't really feel like it was something for me, but now I'm paying a little bit more attention. So we believe that the more the turnout, the better for us, the better for the country, and we're really focused not just on those folks, though are incredibly important. Iowa caucus goers are some of the most sophisticated, thoughtful voters in the entire country. They take this process incredibly seriously, so we're focused on those folks that show up every time, but we're also focused as much on the people that don't, and not just on saying, hey, here's Beto, here's why you should be part of the caucus, but also here's how to do it, so it doesn't feel scary, doesn't feel like something that they're not going to be comfortable with, to let them know how it works. We're going to spend a lot of time sharing with folks how simple it is and how you can go bring a friend with you so you're doing it together, and how important it is going to be and a great experience when they participate in that very cold evening in Iowa. So maybe time for one more question?
We got one more. This one is for Adnan in office. So we have the debate coming up. What are you thinking about in regards to it? And are you considering switching things up from last couple of debates or keeping them?
Thinking about a different tie this time. And actually, maybe we should do a crowdsourced, tie selection. No, I think something that I felt very good about from the last debate in Houston was just how clearly, how strongly we talked about what we thought was important for this country. And we didn't use calculated language, didn't think about what was safe or even okay to say, just said what I felt and what I've heard from so many of you. And on probably the most well-known response, which is on gun violence, I really felt the anger and the frustration of so many of those parents that I met in Odessa, in El Paso, in Aurora, in Denver, in Chicago, across this country, who want us, demand that we do something, and that came out of me. We also had a really important opportunity to talk about race in America and foundational and endemic and systemic racism in all the pernicious ways that it manifests itself, not just in our criminal justice system, and that's really bad there, but in healthcare, in our economy, in education, in our democracy, and then what it's going to take to be able to confront that. So I want to do the same thing in this debate, just be real honest, very raw, very direct in answering the question and describing an America in our administration where we live up to our full potential and fully reveal our promise. Unafraid, absolutely fearless, not just in giving the answer, but in what it is we propose that we're going to do. I think that's what America needs right now. That's what I'm going to do with the limited time that I have with 11 other candidates on that stage. But as Jen said, not everyone's tuning into these debates. So we will do a great job at that debate, but expanding the electorate, reaching all those Iowans who may not have traditionally caucused before, but will this next year, that's what this campaign is all about. Building on the work that we do out in public, whether it's the debate stage, on TV, in these town halls, but the even more important work of knocking on doors, making phone calls, enlisting the help of those who know their communities better than we ever will, and getting them to join this campaign. That's what you all have made possible so far. That's the great work that we have to build on, and that's what we're asking from everyone who's watching right now. One last appeal to go to BetoO'Rourke.com, make a contribution. You've heard how we're using the resources, how we're going to expand the electorate, how we're going to reach our fellow Americans who have this very important decision before them. And also to sign up and be one of those on this team who's knocking on doors and making phone calls. You can do all of that at BetoO'Rourke.com. And now I think we're going to enjoy a beer. Thank you all very much.